What's up, folks? Welcome back. This is the Goldfishing companion video for my Vivi Ornitier Commander deck tag. I made a full video for this deck, which you can check out, link down in the description. Go watch that first, come back to this video, because in this video we're going to see how the deck operates. This is a high bracket 3 deck, and so we aim to finish the game by between turns 7 and 8, and we're going to be tracking life totals this time so that you guys can see how fast this deck can burn down the table. Additionally, I made one swap, one experimental swap from the deck tag. I swapped out a Volcanic Torrent for mass manipulation, just have one more finisher in there. We'll see how that works out in the end. And then we'll also be doing multiple games. So we'll do 2 games. The first game will assume a little interaction for Vivi, and we'll assume the second game very heavy interaction where we always have to be burning our protection, or we always have to have Vivi on board with a protection spell in hand in order to negate any sort of targeted removal that might come his way. With that intro out of the way, let's hop into the playtester here. We are running 37 lands, so we would like to see 3 lands in our opener, and we do have a counterspell protection piece. We have 4 lands here. We have an unblockable cantrip, and we have a plot spell on turn 1. So this is absolutely perfect. We will keep this opener, and we will start our turn 1 with Disrupt Decorum drawing off the top. So let's go Mountain, and then we're going to plot this Demonic Ruckus. Now, Demonic Ruckus says Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has Menace and Trample, and when is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So then we'll go to turn 2. We will also play a Sulphur Falls, and because we don't really have a turn 2 play, we don't have any mana rocks or anything, we're just going to pass because Vivi also costs 3 mana, and we do want to have some protection in hand before we end up casting Vivi. So let's go to turn 3. Shivan Reef is going to be our 3rd land here, and now we also don't have a turn 3 play, so this is where we would look at what our opponents are doing. We'll assume in game 1 we can cast the Vivi on turn 3, but normally I would hold up a 1 mana protection piece for Vivi and wait until turn 4. So it just depends on what table you're sitting at here. Let's go to turn 4. We do have a nice finisher here with mass manipulation. Let's drop a Fiery Islet. And because we can now cast our plot spell for free, we will attach that to Vivi, which I'm going to actually just put kind of off to the side here. So Vivi is going to get a 1/1 counter. It will also get an additional +1/+1 from the Demonic Ruckus. It has Menace and Trample, so it is now a 2/5, and it will also deal 1 damage to each opponent. So life 2 will be our opponent's here, life 1 will be our life, so our opponents will take 1 from that being plot for free. Now we do have 4 mana here, and again, here's where the limitations of Goldfishing. We could be casting our Disrupt Decorum if our opponents have scary creatures on board that we want to get off of our back. But I think normally it'd probably be too early in the game to cast a fruitful Disrupt Decorum. So I think what we might want to do is just cast a Slip Through Space to start getting more counters on Vivi to start adding more mana. So let's do that, and that will go to the graveyard, and we will draw a card from that. That will cost us a blue mana, and Vivi will get another counter. So at this point, Vivi's at 3 power. We could get in for a little bit of combat damage, but here I actually just like holding up some mana, making our opponents second guess what we're doing here a little bit and hold up that Dispel while we wait for more fuel to come through with our draws. So let's go next turn, turn 7. We do have a Confounding Conundrum, which is absolutely awesome, so let's go 5 mana there. We'll do the Confounding Conundrum for 2 mana. ETBs draw a card whenever a land ETBs under opponent's control of that player. Another land in the battlefield under the controller's turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. And we also have the Mana Geyser. My goodness. Okay, so this is going to enable a crazy turn 6 here. We do have enough mana to cast the Disrupt Decorum, and I think that at this point in time, we probably would be wanting to do that. So let's activate Vivi's ability here. So Vivi is currently a 4 power, I believe, and so that would be enough mana to then cast our Disrupt Decorum to get a little bit of heat off of our backs. And we also have the mana being held up here to cast the Dispel if we need to protect Vivi, and at this point we'll assume that we will have to do that on our opponent's turns before we move to turn 6. Also, we have to account for the damage that was dealt from the Confounding Conundrum, also the Dispel, and then the Disrupt Decorum, and then Vivi will get 2 additional counters from the Dispel cast and the Disrupt Decorum cast because we accounted for the Confounding Conundrum. We could play our Command Tower for the turn. So here we have to do a lot of counting for our mana because this turn is about to get a little bit complicated and assumptions have to be made here. So I'm going to assume that Mana Geyser will make us about 10 mana. Again, limitations of Goldfishing. Here we would be able to see what our opponents have for tapped lands and inform our casting. But for Goldfishing, we have to assume 10 mana. So if we were to tap for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then cast the Mana Geyser, which I'm not going to do, but let's just assume we do that. Mana Geyser will make us 10 mana, which means that we have 11 with Command Tower, plus that will uptick Vivi, so he now is a total of 7 power. We could then activate his ability to then get a total of 18 mana, I believe. So then if we were to cast our Mass Manipulation, X would be equal to 7 in this case. So we would be able to then uptick Vivi again, burn our opponents for another 2 to account for the Mana Geyser plus the Mass Manipulation. And here we will be able to gain control permanently of 7 creatures on the board, which is basically all of the best creatures on the board. To cast a Mass Manipulation for 7 by turn 6 is pretty impressive, and I think that could be considered a game ender if our opponents did not have a board wipe or a way to deal with our board state at this time. We do not have any counterspell protection to hold up to negate that board wipe, which is what would be nice to have in hand. But next turn, if we did still have Vivi, then we could cast that Chandra's Ignition to then deal a total of, let's see, I believe we would get the cast trigger first, so we would be able to deal 9 damage to each creature our opponents control and our opponents as well. Now their life total is quote unquote at 34, but we'd be swinging out with all of the creatures that we got from Mass Manipulation as well. So I think we can conclude perhaps a win by turn 7. Let's just see what our next draw would be. We would be able to cycle the Lonely Sandbar. Let's just see what our next draw would be. Okay, so Counterspell, we'd be able to safely cast the Chandra's Ignition, holding up counter protection, which would not be bad there. Let's just see what our next 3 draws would be. Okay, so more cantripping then would then draw us into a mana drain for more protection. So really we'd be able to hold on to the board state that we would have because we would have so much protection here. So I think that will be considered a victory by turn 7 with that Mass Manipulation cast on turn 6. Okay, let's start a new game. Let's start a new game, and this time we will assume that we have to have protection in our hand, otherwise Vivi will be removed off of the board. Okay, so we do see a total of 4 lands here. We've got a Mystic Remora for turn 1, absolutely excellent, and we do have a Mishra's Bauble, which we can just sack right away to draw into more spells if we need to, but I think we'll probably hold on to that for a Vivi cast. So here, I think let's just go a Glasspool Mimic turn face down so that we can play the land side of Glasspool Mimic. That will enter tapped, and Archidect is being a little bit tricky here. Okay, so I'll enter tapped. Let's go next, and I apologize. We need to also draw our first card for the turn. Okay, now we'll go to turn 2. So let's see. So we've got, let's do the mountain, I'm thinking, to get some red source on the battlefield. And here I think we want to definitely cast the Mystic Remora. Now here again, we're gonna have to make some assumptions in our gold fishing, but Mystic Remora, let's assume that this will draw us maybe 1 card on our opponent's turns as they ramp on turn 2. On our upkeep here, Mystic Remora will get an age counter, and then we must pay 1, otherwise we sacrifice it. So we are going to add an age counter via just the 1/1 counter there, and we will pay for the fish, and then we will play an island for the turn. And actually, I'm thinking, let's actually play out the Fabled Passage for a tapped land, because we don't really need the untapped land at this point in time, given that we don't have any protection for Vivi to cast Vivi. So let's go look for an island that will go to the battlefield tapped here because we don't control 4 or more lands. And then I think we will just go next. I think that's totally fine. We do have 7 cards in hand here, so let's go next, and then we will get an age counter on the fish. Now let's think about, do we want to pay for the fish? And maybe we can assume we draw 1 more card, and that's probably all that we'll assume that fish will get us. So do we want to pay for the fish? Well, This turn, we still don't have any protection for Vivi, unfortunately. So I think we are going to maybe start dealing with our opponent's board by casting the Wave Goodbye, perhaps, for 4 with our land drop. So I think we actually do want to let the fish go to the graveyard. Then we can cast the mountain, or not cast, play rather. And then I think at this point, our opponent's boards are scary enough where we're going to cast that Wave Goodbye to return each creature without a 1/1 counter on it to its owner's hand. Again, playing really conservative here, needing that counter spell to keep up for Vivi. Okay, so Scalding Tarn. Let's see, we could play an untapped land via the Shock Land with Scalding Tarn, or a tapped Surveil land. At this point, I think what we might want to do is just plot out Pyretic Charge, having nothing in hand, and our opponents are currently rebuilding. So let's go Scalding Tarn to search for a Surveil land, which I believe is called Thundering Falls, within the Izzet colors. So that will enter tapped, and we will Surveil 1, which is desperately needed here, so we can, let's see, what do we have in our hand? Do we have anything that will target Vivi? Okay, we will keep the Vesuvian Duplimancy on top here because we do have a spell that targets, and so if we assume that 1 copy of Vivi is removed from our opponents, then we'll still have another. So let's go 4 mana here to then cast the, or rather plot the Pyretic Charge. Discard your hand, then draw 4 cards. For each card discarded this way, creatures control it +1/+0 until end of turn, and that will just sort of hang out here in exile. Then let's go next, and here we're seeing where, you know, holding up that interaction is very important and will slow the deck down considerably if we don't draw any protection. So let's go 4 mana for the Vesuvian Duplimancy, and then we've got a 0 mana, so maybe we just hold up the Dress Down for our opponent's turns. So I think we actually do that. Maybe on our opponent's turns we cast the Dress Down using up the remaining 2 mana here, and then we will draw a card off of that. Okay, so now we've got an Arcane Denial. Let's go turn 7. Steam Vents can enter untapped. We will take 2 off of that. Of course, we would probably have taken some combat damage over the course of the game. So now let's go 1, 2, 3 to cast Vivi, and we'll tap like an adult here. Let's go blue, red, and then red, and we're going to cast the Vivi here. So now what we can do, that targets only a single artifact or creature. Okay, so let's go enter the Enigma for 1. Vivi will get a counter, and then we will draw a card, and our opponents will take 1 damage. Then that will go to the graveyard. We would like to perhaps empty our hand here with Pyretic Charge. Oh, and also we will get a token copy of Vivi. That's very important. Let's go create a token copy of Vivi here. And I believe the cast trigger, we could resolve the Vesuvian Duplimancy first, and then the no, I don't think the token would see the cast trigger now that I think about it. Okay, so we have a separate copy of Vivi here, which is awesome. We have 3 mana to work with, which is not a lot, but I think what we do is we hold up the Arcane Denial. Perhaps we'll play out the Mishra's Bauble to then look at the top card of target player's library, draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So we'll just do that once our opponent's turn comes around. Vivi will get a +1/+1 counter, and this Vivi will get a +1/+1 counter. And now we do technically have 3 mana as well to play out, or perhaps to plot out, our Highway Robbery. So let's do that. Let's plot out the Highway Robbery using the mana from our original Vivi copy here, and then we still have the lands untapped to hold up Arcane Denial. So if we use the Arcane Denial, first of all, let's assume we draw our card from the Mishra's Bauble, so we'll do that on our opponent's upkeep. Then our Arcane Denial, we will draw a card as well to counter whatever removal spell is targeted at Vivi, and that will use up our remaining 2 mana. Now we go to turn 8. Okay, awesome. So we have a Soul Ring here, and we will uptick Vivi. Our opponents will take, oh gosh, okay, hold on. We have to add the counters from the Arcane Denial, and then we have to, let's assume that's not cast yet, and then we have to account for our opponent's life totals, so they're down to 37. So then we go Soul Ring for 1, we uptick Vivi, and we uptick Vivi. Is there anything that targets here? We could cast, or we could plot the Highway Robbery, and then the Pyretic Charge. I'm thinking we actually play the Pyretic pyretic charge after we cast the expropriate if we have the mana to do so. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 7 mana from Vivi. Okay, so we definitely have the expropriate. So here's what I would probably do. Let's go, or we could cast. Let's see. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 7, so it's 15 minus 9, so we would have 6 remaining, which means we could cast the Eagle Vision. I'm thinking we could plot out the Highway Robbery actually and get a free spell cast there. So let's do that. Okay, so we're going to cast the Highway Robbery for free from its plot cost. So discard a card or sack a land. If you do, draw 2 cards. So what we want to do here is perhaps sack the tapped land so I can go to the graveyard. Then we will get another 1/1 counter on our VVs, and then we will burn our opponents for another 2. And now, because that's going to be mana positive for us, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then let's, we have to use all of the mana. So we have 8 plus 9 is 17. And we want to cast the expropriate for 9, which means we have 9 mana remaining here. I think we could do that. I think we could go Seagate Restoration before we cast expropriate. So we go Seagate Restoration. All right, let's see. Let me make sure I'm doing my math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Plus, we would have another 2 counters off of Vivi, so that would be another 11, so we would have 19. So I think we have enough mana here. So let's go. Let's uptick Vivi, burn our opponents for another 2. Draw 3 cards. I believe we played out the Steam Vents. Now we have no max hand size for the rest of the game. And then we could, do we have any targeted spells? I think that this token copy of Vivi is not legendary because of the Vesuvian duplimancy. So that consumed, okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we had to use, we have 1 floating from our lands and we still have 11, which means we have access to 12 total mana. So if we cast our expropriate, we would have to use Vivi's ability, which means we couldn't create the copy off of 3 steps ahead. So let's go expropriate to take that extra turn, gain control of the 3 best permanents on the battlefield, and that will consume our mana from Vivi. So we have 1 floating plus, let's uptick these, although we would activate for 11, so we have 12 total mana minus the expropriate mana for 9, which means we have 3 floating right now. Now we go to our next turn here, which will be technically turn 8 still, I suppose. Let's see, so Confounding Conundrum, let's drop a Command Beacon. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we'll assume that we have to hold up 3 steps ahead. Okay, this mana math is going to be pretty difficult here. So what we'd like to do is cast a copy of Vivi at the very minimum. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 to create a token copy. And now we could create a copy of Vivi, and then again, assuming depending on what our opponents have on board, if we suspect that they're going to target a Vivi or wipe the board, we could certainly hold this up as a counterspell. But let's just be a little bit optimistic here. So let's create the token copy there, and so now that will uptick this Vivi and this Vivi, and that will go to the graveyard, and then maybe we actually also draw some cards off of that. So if we go an additional 2 mana from that, actually we'll tap our Soul Ring. We can draw 2, then discard a card. So let's discard this River Glide Pathway. 3 steps ahead, goes to the graveyard there. So now we also have a Pyretic Charge hanging out in our plot here for free. So let's go 1, 2. So now we have to start digging into our Vivi mana here. So we're going to be able to, if we cast our Renicus's Vile Duplication, every single non-creature spell now will be burning our opponents for 4, which is pretty nice. So we could, I think what we want to do is maybe cast the Irenicus's and then the Confounding Conundrum. I think we can, oh no, we already played out the Command Beacon. I think if we go Confounding Conundrum, draw a card, let's do that before we start digging into our Vivi mana here. So let's tap into our 8 Vivi mana here. So we're going to activate the ability. So Arenicus' Vile Duplication will create another token copy of Vivi, create token copy, and then we will uptick these fellas. We've got 8-4, so we've got 4 floating from the secondary activation here. The Vesuvian Duplimancy will trigger to create another copy of Vivi, and then now, oh my god, this is getting insane. Okay, so Arenicus will go to the graveyard. We can tap, or we can activate 12 additional mana here, plus we've got 4, so 16 mana at our disposal. I think we can then swing in, oh gosh, okay, we got 4, so let's go Pyretic Charge to discard our hand and then draw 4 cards, and that will uptick this, that will uptick this, that will uptick this, that will uptick this, and that will burn our opponent's, oh my gosh, and I've been failing to keep track of the damage here, so that's going to burn our opponents for, oh gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4 at the very least from Confounding Conundrum, plus the Pyretic Charge is going to burn them for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at this point, let's see, so discard our hand, then draw 4 cards. Okay, so we'll discard our hand, then draw 4 cards. For each card discarded this way, creatures you control get +1/+0, so they would get +4/+0, I believe. Yep, okay, +4/+0. And then I think we already accounted for that, so that will go to the graveyard, so we'll draw 4 cards here. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Okay, so these are going to get +4/+0. Okay, so we've accounted for our power buffs. Now, my goodness, we can just, let's cycle the Lonely Sandbar. We still got 4 floating. Let's cycle the Lonely Sandbar to draw 1. We can use 2 of our 4 floating for Fists of Flame to create another token copy of Vivi. Token copy of Vivi that will burn our opponents. Until end of turn, target creature control gets +0 for each card you draw on this turn. Okay, so let's go add subtract. Gosh, I don't even know how many cards I've drawn this turn. At least 6, right? Something like that. I have no clue. So then that will create another token copy of Vivi that will burn our opponents for another, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or no, that will burn our opponents for 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shadow Rift, target creature, target the original, draw a card off of that, and then we would be able to burn our opponents for another 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we will use a couple of activations. I don't even know. We can use this activation, burn the remaining floating mana for Disrupt Decorum. Our opponents take another 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we can activate another Vivi to cast Thundering Eruption, burn our opponents for another 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My goodness, that is victory by turn 9 with an absolutely insane storm turn there with our token copies of Vivi, and I think we had just enough card draw to churn through the deck. As you can see, we had 0 issues with mana, and that Vesuvian Duplimancy coming in absolutely clutch. So that is the deck, folks. Hopefully you get an idea for how this deck performs, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like on it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you want to support me and my channel, you can check out my Patreon, linked down below. And with that, we will say au revoir and goodbye, everybody.